Breaking this morning, the FBI says it's investigating another attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. The latest happening at his Florida golf course, where investigators say the suspect hid in bushes about 400 yards away from Mr. Trump. Authorities say the suspect had an assault-style rifle with a scope and these two backpacks.
Former President Donald Trump is safe and unharmed. The U.S. Secret Service personnel opened fire on a gunman located near the property line, and this matter is under investigation.
Police arrested 58-year-old Ryan Wesley Ruth. Court records show he has a long criminal record and is now facing federal charges. In the aftermath, the former president praised law enforcement for keeping him safe. Well, his 2024 opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris, condemned political violence and is urging all Americans to do their part to make sure that this incident does not lead to others. Good morning. Good to have you with us on a busy Monday. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Christine Romans in for Savannah. From Florida to Washington, we have team coverage of the investigation and the fallout. We begin with NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirch in West Palm Beach, Florida. Good morning there. So, Jesse, walk us through how this whole incident unfolded on Sunday.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. So it was yesterday afternoon, according to officials, that former President Donald Trump was golfing here. According to a source familiar, the president was between the 5th and 6th holes. And as officials described at a press conference, there's an agent who walks ahead of the former president, goes ahead of the former president on the golf course and scouts the area in front of where he is playing. And during that searching of the area ahead of the former president reaching the specific part of the golf course where this unfolded, according to officials, the Secret Service agent spotted a rifle sticking through the bushes toward the golf course. And according to the U.S. Secret Service, agents opened fire. It's not clear if anyone returned fire. And then fast forward, and someone is seen, according to officials, fleeing through the bushes and fleeing the area. And according to officials, a witness captured a photo of a getaway vehicle. The information, including the license plate of that vehicle, was then used, sent out to authorities all over the area. And in a neighboring county, Martin County, you can see an image of it there, authorities were able to make a traffic stop and take someone into custody who has now been identified by sources as Ryan Wesley Ruth, 58 years old, according to 3 senior law enforcement officials. And so this ended with someone in custody. But again, and that's the image of the person who who sources tell us is in custody, but he has not been named officially as a suspect by officials at a press conference yet, guys.
So, Jesse, what more are we learning about this suspect who's now in custody and just how the investigation moves forward from here?
Yes, still a lot of questions unanswered, of course, and those are the images that we've been shown from the scene of what was found there: an AR-style rifle, ceramic plates in backpacks. You can see the setup there along the fence line, and that is right in the area where I am right now. So what we know is that Ryan Wesley Ruth has a conviction for possession of a machine gun in 2022. There appears to be an extensive criminal history for this man, and he had previously told news outlets that he had traveled to Ukraine to help the war effort over there. And the state's attorney's office now tells us, guys, in Palm Beach County, that the case is being turned over to the federal government, that the Department of Justice will be filing charges. So we'll be keeping an eye out for any potential court appearance, possibly even today in the days ahead. So, you know, again, a lot of unanswered questions. But I just want to stress again, if you come back to our live shot here, you can see behind me here the bushes. So this is the entrance to the golf club. The intersection that has been heavily blocked off is down that way. But I can tell you, this is a main road. It's not like there are homes that you could just be walking by. The bushes are very high. They're very thick. I can't see into the golf club as we've been driving around the area. So it's clear that someone would have had to have gotten through a heavy amount of bushes. And one of the questions I have and would be asking at a press conference is if anyone had eyes on this person getting into the bushes, because even that seems to have been something that would have required a good amount of effort, guys.
And, Jesse, what has been the reaction from Mr. Trump and his campaign?
Yeah, so we've heard from the former president himself now. He posted on social media, said he described it as an interesting day, a moment of levity there. He thanked law enforcement for what they did, and he referred to the job done by law enforcement responding as, quote, absolutely outstanding. He said he's very proud to be an American, and we'll be looking for any more reaction from the former president today.
All right, Jesse, thanks so much.
Jesse mentioned Martin County, and we are joined now by the Martin County Sheriff William D. Snyder, which is just north of Palm Beach. It's where the suspect was taken into custody a short time after this incident at the golf club. Sheriff, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I mean, first, let's just talk about how this all unfolded. We know an eyewitness spotted the suspect who was fleeing from bushes outside the Trump golf course. Someone took photos of his car. That led to an alert being issued by law enforcement. Just walk us through what happened from that point on and just how valuable that information from the eyewitness was to help you make this arrest.
Well, sure. The eyewitness really makes this whole thing possible. We got the information from the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. It was seamlessly transmitted to us. We understood from them that there'd been an assassination attempt on the President of the United States, former President Trump, and that their vehicle was possibly heading our way. We mobilized our whole Sheriff's Office. We had a bomb team on standby, helicopters going airborne, and we deployed to the interstate. Fortunately, one of my road patrol deputies at one of the exits did see the vehicle and began following it until ultimately we have large trucks with push bumpers. We were able to maneuver that vehicle off the interstate without a chase, and then using a felony stop, what we call felony stop, get the suspect out of the vehicle and into custody.
Can you give us a sense about how much time passed between getting that BOLO, that be on the lookout notification, and when the suspect was then taken into custody?
Yes, we got the BOLO initially from Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office at about 1:55, and within 15 minutes, we picked that vehicle up. We're the north border county to Palm Beach County, so when Rick Bradshaw's team let us know the suspect might be heading this way, at 15 minutes tops.
So it all happened very quickly. And it all happened, by the way, on I-95, which is a very, very busy highway for folks who aren't familiar with it. Explain how you went about making this arrest in such a busy highway.
Well, it took good police work. I have a phenomenal road patrol section. We're known as the hashtag wrong exit county. You can't leave South Florida without going through Martin County, and we're a choke point. So we have a lot of experience stopping cars at high speeds on I-95. As soon as we saw the vehicle, we shut everything down south of where that vehicle was. So really our primary goal was to prevent collateral damage. We know we already had somebody try to kill the highest value target on the planet, and that we took it very seriously. We had a green light. Had that suspect made the mistake of trying to run from us or producing a firearm, you'd be asking me how many times we shot him this morning.
Whoa. What were your deputies' interactions like with the suspect as he was being taken into custody?
Well, they were very careful. Of course, we did what you've seen on TV 100 times, a felony stop. Order him out of the vehicle at gunpoint. We had SWAT team on route, and a couple of my SWAT team boys were there already. They had him at rifle point, get out of the vehicle, on his knees, interlock his hands. You've seen it before, and then take him into custody. I arrived a moment later, and I would describe his demeanor as very calm. He seemed to have a very bland facial affect, didn't seem perturbed or disturbed by what was going on. I mean, we had a helicopter overhead, men with rifles and blue lights, and the interstate shut down. He was just as calm as if he was going for a picnic after church.
Anything he say at that point?
No, he made no comment. And of course, we were very careful. We knew this would be an FBI investigation, and we certainly didn't want to cross over into their case. Our job was to get him in custody and hold on to him until the federal authorities arrived a very short time later.
It's just remarkable. It was only 15 minutes from the BOLO to the time you had him in your hands. Is that surprising to you, how quickly this went? It seems like everything just went exactly to plan.
No, I live near the interstate, and when I heard the call and heard he might be coming my way, I just sat down after church for a little snack, As soon as I knew he was coming this way, I said, there's no snack for me. And sure enough, within moments, my guys had sighted the vehicle, and then I've described to you what happened after that.
Quick work. All right, Sheriff William D. Snyder, thank you so much. Let's continue this conversation with Rob D'Amico. He's the founder of Sierra One Consulting and a former member of the FBI's hostage rescue team. Rob, thanks for joining us this morning. How surprised are you to see something like this happen again so soon after the attempted assassination attempt on Mr. Trump back in Pennsylvania in July? Only 9 weeks.
Yeah, I was absolutely. I was watching all my football games, and when I started getting the text coming in, and when I saw the gunfire, I thought, because the neighborhood surrounding the Trump golf course, I thought maybe there was gunfire in the area and it was overheard and the Secret Service reacted to it. And then word started getting in what was going on. And I was absolutely floored that this soon after another assassination attempt, and a fairly accurately planned one. I think the Secret Service agent that shot at him interrupted him. I think he was waiting. He was probably scoping out his rifle, looking what field of vision he had, and then picking a point that when Trump walked into it, that he was going to engage. And I think the Secret Service agent in front of him saw the rifle barrel. And I do think if Pennsylvania hadn't happened, he might not have taken a shot. He might have investigated it, but I don't think he would have taken a shot. I think the complacency that was with some of these events before was really taken away and from Pennsylvania, saying, hey, this can happen. It did happen. And he took the absolutely right action.
So we now have a suspect in custody. We just heard how that all unfolded a moment ago. What's the FBI's priority right now in the early stages of this investigation?
The first one was always to make sure that this wasn't a conspiracy and other people involved. So they're going to start, again, the search warrants for all the electronic devices, his phone, his laptops, his computer, his home. That's all going to go out. And then the investigators are going to start looking at if there's a connection, did someone help him? Also, the Secret Service is going to start looking at, did he post something that may have led them to see this beforehand? Looking at the social media, it's really tough. But I think what we're going to see in some of these is he's probably using encrypted apps. And that's one of the blind sides with the government. I'm working with a software company now to capture those encrypted apps legally so that we can start tracking this, because Discord and WhatsApp and Telegram, they're all talking about these things. And the government right now does not have that solution to grab those encrypted apps. So I think that's where we're going to start seeing this. He was talking to people probably on platforms that were outside the U.S. and encrypted.
Rob, when you look at the details that have been released so far, we've got information about the gun and the scope, the GoPro camera, a ceramic tile in backpacks hung on the fence, perhaps maybe as some kind of a shield. Does this strike you as sophisticated, this plot against the former president?
I wouldn't say sophisticated. I would say he was planning. I think all these active shooters have a vision of how this is going to go in their head. He was going to put the plate on. He had the camera. He wanted to capture this. I think he thought there was going to be a shootout, and he was interrupted. But when you look at it as a former sniper, you never stick your weapon past the bushes or the window, because it does exactly what the Secret Service saw. There's a straight line that's easily not seen as a branch. It's too straight. And then he saw the optics. So, I mean, I even taught my son when he was little with his Nerf gun, you always sit back from that. And that's a sniper's technique. So I don't think sophisticated in tactics. I think it was well planned out. And I think they're going to start looking at some cellular data, maybe even some commercial ID data. Was he down there before? So did he scope this out before and then pick the day to go out and do this? Or was it, hey, he's playing golf and it was more ad hoc? But I think you're going to see that he probably planned it out. He probably drove down there a few times. He might have got into the woods without a weapon to see if anything happened. So I think he definitely reconned this for the day that he picked.
Well, you know, golf courses are wide open spaces with lots of natural cover, camouflage. Do you think the Secret Service is going to have to reevaluate how they protect the former president on the course, or even let him golf at all?
Absolutely. You never want to say, hey, you can't do something, because then they win. And I don't think President Trump's going to allow that either. But I think they're really going to have to start increasing his resources on his security detail. And they're going to have to really start taking a look how they're doing it. Again, golf courses are terrible because of the wood line and then openness. So you have that ability to hide somewhere and then have a clear shot for probably a couple hundred yards across a fairway or a green or something. It's one of the worst places that you can look at, securing. The only thing that would be different if it was a high ground around it, as we saw in Pennsylvania, that'd make it about 2 times worse. But it is one of the toughest, and they're going to have to take a look at it. They're going to probably have to bring some technology in, maybe some drones flying ahead, type of thing to look at it. So I think they're definitely going to go more resources.
Rob D'Amico, thank you so much.
For more now, let's bring in NBC News White House correspondent Ali Rafa. Ali, good morning to you. What are we hearing from President Biden now about this apparent assassination attempt?
Yeah, good morning, guys. Well, remember, it was just 2 months ago that we saw President Biden deliver that address to the American people from the Oval Office after that first assassination attempt against former President Trump, in which he condemned political violence and called for the political temperature in this country to go down. And he repeated that sentiment in a statement reacting to this news yesterday, saying, quote, "There is no place for political violence or any violence ever in our country." He said that he's directed his team to continue to ensure that the Secret Service has every resource, capability, and measure necessary to ensure the former president's safety. And he also added that he's, quote, relieved that the former president is okay, and emphasized that there is an active investigation into what happened yesterday, guys.
We're now exactly 50 days from the election. How is his rival for the presidency, Vice President Harris, reacting to the incident this morning?
Yeah, and definitely more attention on campaign trail travel and how the Secret Service is going to keep these candidates safe. The vice president, for her part, reacting to this in a post on X yesterday, saying she's been briefed on the apparent assassination attempt and that she's glad the former president is safe. She added that she's deeply disturbed by this news, saying, quote, "As we gather the facts, I will be clear. I condemn political violence," saying that we all must do our part to ensure that this incident doesn't lead to more violence. And her running mate, Governor Tim Walz, also shared that sentiment in the wake of this news. The vice president also repeating what President Biden said, that there will be an effort to make sure that the Secret Service has every resource available to them to ensure that the former president is safe, you guys.
Ali, this is once again putting the Secret Service in the spotlight, especially after all the criticism 2 months ago. We know there has been a bigger presence for Mr. Trump, especially at campaign events. So what should we know about the Secret Service detail when a former president, in this case one who's a nominee, is out in public as a private citizen?
Absolutely. This is raising even more concerns, considering the fact that for the second time in 2 months, a gunman was able to get this close to the former president. And as you mentioned, after security had already been boosted in the wake of that rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, where this first assassination attempt happened. Now, as far as what we know about the security apparatus around the former president, my colleague Kelly O'Donnell is reporting that an official tells her that this golf outing was considered an off-the-record protectee movement as opposed to a planned event. And what that entails as far as the security around former President Trump was that he had a counter-assault team, counter-surveillance team, a counter-sniper team, as well as protective intelligence units and drone contingents, in addition to his regular personal detail of Secret Service agents. So with that level of security, it's really raising new concerns, new questions on how this was able to happen and what has to change in order for this not to happen again. We know that the acting Secret Service director is on the ground in South Florida today. He's going to be meeting with local and federal law enforcement officials. And we also know that there is an effort to have a sit down with the former president himself, but that hasn't been locked in yet, you guys.
All right, Ali, thanks so much.
Time now for your morning news now weather. Millions are waking up to flood alerts across the Carolinas this morning.
Meteorologist Violetta Yes is tracking the potential storm threat for us. Good morning, Violetta.
Good morning, guys. Yes, we're keeping a very close eye on this area. You can see our flood watches in effect for eastern North Carolina and also parts of eastern South Carolina as well, with the most intense flooding likely here from just north of Myrtle Beach up through the Wilmington area and extending inland. Now, a brief overscope here of the tropics. We still have tropical depression Depression Gordon really hanging by a thread at this point. We are, of course, here locally much more concerned with potential tropical cyclone number 8 that is sitting offshore of the Carolinas, about 95 miles to the east-southeast of Charleston. Winds have ticked up a little bit this morning, up to 50 miles per hour. Time is sort of running out here for this to intensify into a tropical storm, but there still is that potential here through the course of the next couple of hours. Nonetheless, we do already have those tropical storm warnings in effect from Morehead City all the way down through Charleston. This, of course, includes Myrtle Beach as well. So we're going to be dealing with the heavy rain, the strong winds, and the dangerous beach conditions as well. Peak wind gusts approaching about 60 miles per hour in places like Myrtle Beach. And you can see strong wind gusts there across eastern South Carolina as well. And, of course, the strong winds will also present those issues with storm surge as well. So these are going to be very typical impacts of tropical storms, even if it doesn't manage to technically intensify just this last little bit here over the next couple of hours. And then, of course, we're going to be dealing with that rain, the strongest rain, or heaviest rain, rather, across eastern North Carolina, down into South Carolina, general 2 to 4 inches. That extending inland locally, we could be looking at up to 6 inches. So flooding, of course, is going to be the big concern there, centered across the Carolinas as this moves onshore today. Eventually, we'll see that moisture spread to the north and west, and we'll see that focus shift into the mid-Atlantic. So maybe places like Virginia, up and through parts of Maryland. And this is actually going to bring some rain into the northeast as well. We've really enjoyed some really nice weather as of late. Of course, all good things must come to an end. And this is likely going to be our next rainmaker as well, in a much more weakened state by the time Wednesday rolls around.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.